Anthony Ferraro and Mancina. Two blind guys collide to bring you Four Bad Eyes Podcast.
What's up, eyes and ears? We got a very special guest for you today on this episode of what's going to be Six Bad Eyes today. This next guest is a huge inspiration of mine. He's an adventurer, a motivational speaker, and an author. He was the first blind man to climb Mount Everest, as well as all 7 largest summits. He started a nonprofit. He co-founded a nonprofit called No Barriers, and it helps people of diverse backgrounds and abilities to attack challenges head on, problem solve, build winning teams, and serve others. He also kayaked the entire 277 miles of the Grand Canyon, and he can be seen in films such as forgive me, I'm having trouble reading my handwriting here, and it's Braille. He's the author of Touch the Top of the World, A Blind Man's Journey to Climb Further Than the Eye Could See, and many other books. He's also in many documentaries you could see him in. This is a big inspiration of mine. He was noted as one of the top 20 adventurers in the last 25 years, and this is an inspiration of mine and a huge role model since I was a little child, Mr. Erik Weihenmayer.
Yeah, if you don't know the name by now, man.
Thanks, guys. Good morning.
What a pleasure.
I'm going to just say it right now. I practiced that intro like 10 times and then totally just got nervous. And I feel like a little kid right now, man. I'm talking to one of my heroes. So thanks so much for being here, Erik.
No, I started playing the guitar about 3 years ago, and I can play a song perfectly. And then when I get in front of a group, I completely space out and forget everything. Yeah, so it's
worse. There's nothing worse. You know, too, because you do motivational speaking. I don't know if you've ever blanked on stage where you just completely lose your spot and you're like, oh, no.
From time to time, yeah, it happens. And if you can fake it, then, the audience doesn't know what they're missing. But
just
push through. I went completely blank on a quote that I was trying to read a couple weeks ago, and
the quotes.
and just had to make it up, and then it sounded so dumb.
If you're skimming through the Braille too, sometimes you're like, I don't know where I'm at, and I got to jump back to it, and I feel so rushed.
I just hope to never hear that recording again.
Yeah.
Just put it behind us.
Yeah, we are so stoked.
Let's take it back. You grew up in Connecticut, correct?
I did. Yeah, I grew up. I moved around. My dad was in the pharmaceutical business, so he was in Miami doing some stuff in Latin America, and then went to Hong Kong, believe it or not, for 6 years, and that was really fun. Got a taste of international travel and adventure and stuff like that, and then I moved back about 6th grade to Connecticut, and that's where I spent the most of my childhood. Yes.
Wow, 6 years is a good chunk to be overseas.
Yeah, it was fun. Hong Kong was pretty exciting place.
Still remember any of the language, or
only the curse words?
Yeah, exactly. As a kid,
as kids, all we knew were the curse words.
Yeah,
most memorable.
Classic. Wow, that's wild.
Your parents didn't know that you had a vision problem at first, correct?
Well, the story that I always heard was my dad was he was a football player, and he was moving a football in front of my eyes, and I wasn't quite tracking, and my eyes were shaking a little bit. And they got nervous, and they started going to different doctors around the country, and it was a long time before they actually were able to diagnose me with this very rare disease called juvenile retinoschisis, which essentially I understand it as like a genetic disease. It's congenital, and it kind of creates there's high pressure in your eyes, and because of that, your retinas keep unraveling. They keep detaching from your eyes, and so I was only middle school, so forth. I only had peripheral vision, which I could see out of the sides of my eyes. The macula was pretty much gone. And so about a week before my freshman year in high school, I was totally blind.
Wow.
It's
Young.
probably the worst time you could possibly go blind.
Yeah, walking into freshman year, being led around by my mobility instructor did not add to my cool points.
I really resonate with that because when I was I transferred from the blind school in Philadelphia to a sighted school in 7th grade, the public school in my town. And I had a TVI that would follow me around and bring these like huge braille, handouts in the middle of class and stuff. And there's a story I read about you that it made me laugh, but I also I really felt for you because I understood where you had to go to the bathroom so bad and you didn't know where it was and you left the classroom and you just kept walking around until you finally peed yourself.
Yep.
Is it
Yeah.
that had to be a embarrassing. How did you feel from that?
I mean, you're the lowest of the low in your life. You're just like a rack. I always thought, in Connecticut, we'd have these raccoons that would like break through our screen doors and they'd come in and eat our garbage. And sometimes at nighttime, you'd walk down into the kitchen and you'd see these raccoons like with their little shiny eyes just snarling at you because you cornered them and they're like just growling, And that's the way I was, just like a little angry raccoon snarling in the corner at everyone and everything because I was so like scared about what my life would look like and I wasn't comfortable being blind and I didn't like the way it made me feel. I didn't like the way people looked at me. Like there was a separation between me and the world, which already exists as a young person, but when you go blind, it makes it even more pronounced. So yeah, no, I was very uncomfortable in my shoes.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask for help, especially, I just didn't have the courage or the confidence to ask for help. So I'd sit there, needing things and I'd just do without.
Yeah. I still have a bit of that hyper sensitivity, whether it be someone making some kind of comment on social media or something it's always about someone says something about blindness. I'm always a little hyper sensitive to that stuff. Do you still have any of that or have you just kind of fully shed all of that and just fully comfortable with who you are?
I mean, I think you do shed it. It does dissipate over time, but it's a long process and it takes a lot of sort of growing and maturity to be comfortable. I think eventually, I mean, and again, it's not like this one moment, but over time, I started realizing that look, I mean, blindness is not this devastating thing that's going to destroy my life. I have to find a place for it and I have to make it comfortable in my life. And I can't have all this emotion attached to it. It has to be like having brown hair, being tall or having green eyes. It's just a part of me. It's an important part of me, but it's not the most important. And so I had to find a place for it and then accept it. I would say that, accepting it was reluctant at first. It was honestly after falling down a bunch of stairs. In Florida, I was walking down a dock and I wasn't using my cane and I could barely see at the time. And I stepped off the side of the dock and did a flip in the air and landed on my back on the deck of a boat. And so I thought, oh my God, Eric, you're going to kill yourself if you don't start learning to use a cane and accept this thing that's happened to you. So honestly, it was like at first being beaten by blindness. Like I just had no choice except to accept. And then over time, you realize that if you do accept and you find a place for it, people begin to reflect you like a mirror, because I was so uncomfortable with myself. The world felt very uncomfortable, like teachers and friends, they didn't know how to help you and things just got awkward and disconnected. But when I accepted it and just said, hey, this is who I am, people began to accept me as who I am. It's a weird sort of circular reflection.
That's a great point.
Man, you did a full flip onto the boat deck, huh?
Yeah, I landed on my back, and then I had all these splinters all the way up and down my arms, and
scary,
the scariest part about
it was
scary.
Is
you don't know where you're gonna land.
Right, and I was so lucky to land flat on my back on this boat deck.
I fell in a river like that once up north in April, cold water.
Because I could have hit a tree. I mean, I could have. I could have hit a root or something. I mean, it's horrible. So
wild.
So yeah, I mean, you like to say like, oh, I had this epiphany and I woke up and I said, I'm going to climb Mount Everest someday. But it doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. It's really just a slow process. And I'm still trying to grow and mature in my life, even at 55.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you
Never
find that
ending
you
pursuit.
do you find that you still get a little like down over the blindness, like, or like you said, it's kind of you're at a peace with that now? But is there ever those
I'm pretty
moments
much
where,
at a peace with it, I think, really. My life has been so good and so rewarding.
yeah,
My anxieties these days are a little bit honestly more about like, hey, I'm 55. How long can I keep climbing and
Hmm.
flourishing as an athlete? And how do you transition in your life from, this amazing athlete, blah, 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 to, somebody who's not as physical as you once were? And how do you transition through that in a graceful way and find sort of a new identity, because I think life is always like sort of moving forward into new identities and trying to be adaptable. So
absolutely.
honestly, that's more of a precedence in my life than blindness.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's a
That's
great point.
definitely, yeah, that's super inspirational here because I know me and Anthony still have those, just
Identity
anxieties about
struggles.
blindness and identity stuff,
Yeah.
We're slowly working, I'm 36, but I'm definitely better than I used to be, but yeah, working towards that for
Like,
sure.
Yeah. I still get little flare ups every now and then
Yeah.
when I say I should have been kinder,
yeah.
to some poor United agent who
Oh,
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
looking past me and saying, "What's his name?" And
oh my gosh.
I'm like, "My name is Eric."
Yeah, that see
We
that
we
that's
do
the stuff
peeves
that
on here, and
oh
that's a peeve.
man.
That's a big peeve.
Of course, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
but the other thing that I realized too was that it was back when I was in my 20s. I joined the Arizona Mountaineering Club, and I was learning to lead climb, which is like a riskier thing when you climb a rock face. You lead the rope up and you put the pieces of gear in the crack or connect them to the bolts.
Uh-huh.
And if you fall, you're going to fall, a ways. And I was belaying this woman who was leading for the first time, and she fell. And crazy enough, she wasn't wearing a helmet back in the 90s. And so she kind of flipped upside down on her rope and smacked her head on the wall. She
Mm.
wasn't, dead or anything, but she had to go home. She had a big, bloody thing on her head, and
Concussion.
and
Yeah.
she and blood splattered on me, I remember. uh, and so then afterwards they were like, well, okay, Eric, I mean, obviously you don't want to lead this. And I was like, oh yeah, I do. Nobody's going to tell me I can't, and I got to the top, but I did almost fall where she fell.
Uh-huh.
And it was a little bit nerve wracking. And I thought to myself at the top, I said, look, are you going to be, I guess people judge, people who are blind, they react, right, with their first impressions and so forth. I go, are you going to be as reactionary as the world itself? You know what I mean? Are you going to do
Mm.
things just because they say, oh, you can't do that? Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, I can. And then I go do something stupid. And I'm just reacting to the world. I'm like,
Yeah.
how do I get to a place where I'm not reacting? I'm more driven from something internal. I
Truly
mean,
what
not to be
you
super cheesy, but like,
yeah.
what's the vision that I have inside me that's sort of this my yearnings, my goals,
Your
my
why.
values, what are the things that I want to sort of be more permanent within me instead of reacting to the world like, oh, Eric, you can't do this. Yes, I can. That
Right.
just seemed shallow to me. So I've been working on that for the last 30 years too.
Yeah, I definitely struggle with that also.
That's huge. Yeah, being comfortable enough with yourself to
But but I think also you talk about this too. It's a lot of it is it's not even about the medals. Like you said, the medals become a museum or a mausoleum. It's it's really about proving to yourself that you can do these things.
Yeah. And I also think it's about celebrating what's possible. For me, all these projects I've done, climbing mountains and kayaking rivers, I've been part of these amazing teams. And
Mhm.
it's been so fun to be a part of this process with a group of people that you love, trying to sort of go through that process that is totally uncertain at first. It's all questions without answers, and then sort of figuring out the way forward, building communication, figuring out systems and strategies and tools, technologies sometimes, and then moving forward through that process towards that, end goal. That's really fun. And honestly, I know we'll talk about this later, but that's really like at the heart of what No Barriers is, this organization and this movement that we've been building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could go right into that, because No Barriers for me, I could say firsthand, it changed my life. Like, when I graduated high school, your dad, shout out to Ed, reached out to my mom and said, because we were very similar in the sense of I wrestled, I was awful at first, and then, climbed to the top, whatever. And it was about going to hike with Global Explorers in Peru, up 16,000 feet summit. And at the time, I was like, hiking sounded incredible. I'd never done it before. I was like, how hard could it be? And then, going through that challenge, summer going into freshman year of college, learning how to climb, like learning how to hike and be with a team and learn that lingo and how to communicate with each other without talking so much, and just breaking through those obstacles that seemed impossible at the time was I went into school with a whole new sense of, confidence and finding myself. It was incredible.
Yeah, those trips were really amazing that we used to do with No Barriers. COVID kind of hurt us a little bit, so our programs are more domestic now, but maybe we'll bring those back because they were so powerful.
Yeah, and the next year I got to go on the Grand Canyon, which I did the first 90 miles, and it was reading your book. I was telling Dan, reading the No Barriers book to kayak the Grand Canyon, I get anxiety. Like, I actually have minor panic attacks when you're talking about the whitewater and the rapids, because I remember swimming through a rapid, and it was the scariest thing I think to this day that I've done in my life. Like being pulled under with a life jacket on, you're being pulled underwater and there's rocks everywhere, and it's just you don't know which way's up at one point.
Yeah, for sure. It's a kayaking is a lot about fear management. And those trips, by the way, are incredibly fun. You raft down to Bright Angel, where you put out, and then you guys hiked up from Bright Angel all the way to the top, which is quite a significant hike. It's probably 5,500 feet. It takes, some people like 10 hours.
It took all day.
So that's amazing accomplishment to be a part of that. But so after that day, after Bright Angel, where you guys hiked out, that's where the big real rapids began.
Oh man.
You go through Horn and Granite and Hermit Falls and eventually all the way down to Lava, which is like the 10 out of 10.
Lava's
on
the one you talked about. Yeah. That
So,
one, scary one.
Climbing, you'll do forever. After accomplishing that kayak trip, are you over kayaking, or is it something you want to still chase, or is it just like,
I get back
that
in my
was
boat every
insane.
now and then, and I practice my rolls, and I was just
Gator
in
rolls?
Chile. Yeah, my jelly rolls.
Jelly rolls.
No, I'm just kidding. My combat rolls.
Yeah.
And so I work on flipping over and so forth. But I just went back into my kayak a couple weeks ago. I was in Chile working and climbing, and we kayaked a river. And it was just like a splashy class 3 kind of fun thing. And I was just like, wow, kayaking is really fun. But no, I don't push the envelope like I used to. I feel like I've been there and I've done that. And kayaking is one of these sports that you have to continually like work really hard every day to keep your skills up. You can't kind of go into it half-ass. So it's either all or nothing.
It's what do you want to put all your effort and time into? And
and it's a lot of work putting all your effort and time into kayaking and getting your boat to rivers and so forth. Climbing is so much more accessible. I can go out with my friends, climb in the morning in the canyon out, just west of where I live. I have a couple tandem mountain bikes, and I get out in the mountains, and we'll have great adventures. And I ski a ton, which is pretty accessible here in Colorado. So I have so many things that keep me busy these days.
Yeah. How have you set up? Like, I've set up my life to have skateboarding very accessible, right? So I assume, is that a reason why you live where you live? And is it how do you get to a climbing place? You know what I mean? Is it just friends most of the time? Is it
You ever take an Uber?
public transportation? Is it Uber? You know what I mean? Like how have you set up your life to have that?
Yeah, I took a teaching job in Phoenix. I was a teacher for 6 years teaching there. I loved it. And I was a weekend warrior. That's where I really started climbing. And I joined the Arizona Mountaineering Club, and they were fantastic. Nobody was like, oh, you can't join this organization or climb. Everybody was really welcoming and cool. And I'd go out on fun trips and learn a lot. But eventually I kind of got tired of Phoenix because it's just a bunch of developers. I mean, I'm being completely overly judgmental here, but it's so many developers just trying to develop every little stretch of desert. So there are a lot of climbing areas that we loved that then had gated communities around them, and you couldn't climb there anymore. And I just kind of got sick of that. I got sick of that attitude. And so I said, where can I go that people have a little more value to the outdoors? So I moved to Colorado, and I had a friend who lived in Boulder. And so, he was my climbing partner in the beginning. We climbed Denali together. So we were training. And when I moved to Colorado, we were training a ton for those bigger mountains. I wanted to get closer to ice climbing, to skiing, to snow. Arizona was great rock climbing, but it really didn't have a lot of snow and ice.
Weather, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this with Jeff, or is that different?
That was Jeff. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Jeff lived in Boulder, and we had so much fun together as we cut our teeth in the mountains.
Right. Yeah. So you moved, you moved for climbing pretty much. Yeah.
I moved for climbing, and I was a teacher, as I mentioned, and I started, I climbed El Capitan 1996. I climbed Denali in 95. And so I started getting attention in the outdoor world, and Mountain Hardware said they wanted to sign me on as an athlete. And I had a couple other sponsors and things like that. Mostly just gear at that point, but I thought maybe I could make a life as a mountain athlete in some way. Like, I didn't really know exactly how to do it. There was a really nice parent at my school who sat me down at his office and tried to help me to figure out a business plan. I had no idea what a business plan even meant.
Especially in the climbing world, is probably way different than your.
Well, I was an English major too, so I had no idea. I like Wall Street. I was like, "Where's Wall Street?" Stock market. Where you buy stocks in this market? Like, where is that? So I didn't know anything. But my dad did work on Wall Street, and he was retiring at the time. My dad was my biggest mentor and coach and so forth. Especially like right after I went blind, my mom died. So it was just me and my dad and my brothers.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was amazing. He's the greatest dad. And he said, I said, Dad, I get this wild hair. I want to make a life in the mountains. He said, well, let's do it. And I'll help you, and I'll become your business manager. I'll help you kind of like do the business side of this life that you're taking on. And it probably was an idea that not too many venture capitalists would have invested in. But yeah, it's been 30 years now. I've been doing this and making it work. But yeah, it's not like a professional athlete where people are throwing money at you. You have to make a life, in terms of writing articles and
right,
and writing books and speaking and getting endorsements and commercials and TV shows, which give you visibility enough to continue to make a living as a climber. So I love the climbing. I love the flexibility. I'm probably climbing 3 days a week, and getting after it. But there is a whole business side to making this work.
Yeah, man, I didn't even think
Everything
about
else,
that whole aspect of it. Yeah,
everything else kind of funds that climbing.
It funds the fun.
That's like my
but
judo.
There's a lot of time behind the computer. There's a lot of like today. This company asked me to go do a self-guided bike tour through Italy. So I'm talking about how I'm going to promote that trip. And then I have to do a video for one of my corporate talks, like an intro video, and blah, blah, blah. And then
podcasts like this. Yep.
Yeah. And then a podcast like this, which is fun. Honestly, this is easy and fun to hang with you guys. But then I also spend a lot of time as a 55-year-old athlete trying to nurse my injuries. I go to this special chiropractor and they put me in traction to kind of like continue to keep my back in alignment as I get more decrepit.
And, Anthony wanted to ask about your recovery.
Work on my elbows, which are like, always sore from climbing. And so anyway, so there's a lot of, as my business manager, Skylar, says, there's a lot of treatments as I get older.
I really want to stay on this. I just have one question from before, just really quick, because in the skateboarding world, you talk about gated off communities around like climbing areas. In the skating world, in street skating, it's like a thing to go to these like forbidden spots and get a clip of you doing something there and then like getting kicked out or whatever. It's like a rush.
Nice.
Is there anything like that in the climbing world where people will go to these,
barge it and
just go in and climb something and get out?
Yeah, people do that in a stealthy way, but people have gotten into trouble too. Like there's this guy, Dean Potter, who was a great climber, and he passed away, but he climbed something like this thing called Delicate Arch, I think. I could be getting it wrong, but it was a sacred Indian tower, and he wasn't supposed to do it. And he got in big trouble, and he lost all his sponsors and everything.
I was gonna say, there's some touchy.
Sometimes
touchy
like
territory.
doing that rebel thing is kind of backfires. But also people, I know he'll remain nameless, but he at nighttime will like climb the Brooklyn Bridge or climb different bridges or towers in New York City. Under the moonlight, like, and then
just free
hopefully
soloing
not go to jail.
Oh my god. With the recovery stuff, like, so I just had my biggest injury ever. 5 weeks ago I had to get ACL surgery. I've never experienced anything like it, and it's it's been a journey so far, and going through it and stuff, just the mental battle, and also
Did you get your own like hamstring, or did you use a cadaver?
I used my own patella tendon.
Yeah, your patella. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did that, and I've been doing the PT. What has been your biggest setback through all this stuff? Have you had a big injury? Have you felt like it was almost over, or something like that? Because I'm dealing with all these thoughts, and also, what do you? I know you do the chiropractor and stuff like that. What else do you do to like maintain and be able to like active recovery?
Let's just say, as a person getting after it physically for the last 30 something years, I've had every injury under the sun. So
really? ACL?
Not ACL, thank God, but I think about that when I ski, you know what I mean?
I
was skiing this like kind of mushy corn a couple days ago, thinking, okay, like I know a lot of people that blow their ACL in this stuff. Don't do it, So no, I haven't had that, but knees have been decrepit. I've had like this rooster comb, like this kind of product that they inject into your knees to kind of give you lubrication in your knees. I've had PRP injections in my elbows. I've had stem cells. I have sadly, my right hip gave out, so I have what's called a hip resurface, which is like a metal cap over your hip. That I can still climb. And then, as I said, like my back and neck are kind of out of alignment from all the physical stuff I've done. So I do this special chiropractic where they hang you in tractions, or they lay you down in these weird traction devices to kind of fix your posture. I've done physical therapy because I've blown out fingers. I've had surgeries on my fingers. Like they actually had to take a strip of tendon out of my wrist and repair my finger. So on and on and on. Yeah, it's when you get to climbing at a hard level, we're not apes anymore. Well, we kind of are versions of apes, but we're not hanging from trees anymore. So we're not really designed to do all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, especially such repetitive, repetitiveness
exactly.
that just breaks you down over time. Do you do any like cold plunge?
So just wear and tear injuries, but I'm still hanging in there pretty well. I mean, I climb 3 days a week. I bike a ton. I ski a lot. I skin uphill, meaning I put fabric skins on my skis and we'll skin uphill and ski down. I lift weights. I do boring things like run on the treadmill and do Peloton on my bike and and I have a rotating climbing wall. It's called a tread wall outside my house, and I get on that thing and climb that. It's like rotates around like you're like a hamster on a hamster wheel, but it's a climbing wall.
Oh, it's you're almost stationary, but the wall is moving.
You're
as
not
you
moving.
climb.
Yeah, exactly. You're only like 2 feet off the ground.
Whoa,
the whole
that sounds
time.
cool.
Yeah.
I never heard
So
of
I
it.
have
No, they
my whole
haven't.
house designed as like a training facility,
Right.
pretty much.
Do you have sauna, cold plunge?
Gosh, funny you mentioned that because I have a hot tub, but my friend who's my age and he's this amazing athlete up in Vail. I just met with him. He's talking about his cold plunge and his red light sauna.
Yeah.
And for sure. I'm thinking about the red light sauna first.
Yeah.
I'm a big sauna guy. I go steam. I don't know.
I'm a sauna guy.
What I've heard is there's not enough science on the actual red light one. I would go straight steam.
Straight sauna. Yeah. I know half the people I talk to say straight sauna. Others say this near light, infrared
one. Yeah.
Infrared light, and I don't know. You're right. It's the science isn't quite locked in yet.
I hope it's good. Yeah. But I do the steam and man, I love it. I'm same with you though. I've been debating this cold plunge and
it's the
best.
I don't really like plunging into cold water. I mean, I swim in cold water a lot in the summer. But just sitting in a tank of cold water or doing the cold showers in the morning, which are highly recommended. I just shudder thinking about that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if it's a fad or, I mean, from what you hear, it sounds like it's pretty good. I know a lot of skaters. I mean, I've done like the little cold bath shower things after skating. As far as recovery goes,
yeah, I think that's really what it is. It
good.
just reduces inflammation as you get older. So
yeah,
I'll tell you, I do a 39-degree cold plunge for 3 minutes, and
yikes.
I feel no pain after.
Yeah,
Nothing.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I think part of my problem with cold plunges is that I've been cold so much in my life. Like I was in Valdez about a month ago, Valdez, Alaska. And we didn't even want to get out of our car. It was so cold and windy. And we finally did. And we climbed this big 800-foot face. And the first pitch, vertical pitch, my hands are completely numb. My feet are completely numb. I'm like just completely miserable. There's ice slamming me in the face. And I'm just like, so I've been cold so often in my life. I'm like,
the hot
why would
tub.
I choose to be cold?
the last thing you want to do is hop in a cold bath.
That's funny because I'll shiver in Florida. Dan calls me Shiver Quiver. I'm like the coldest person ever.
Anthony's cold. Yeah, it's funny.
Hey, nice.
I'm a little used to it from Michigan, but yeah.
How does your doing all this stuff? You've probably been asked this so many times, but what got in your head to do Mount Everest? Like, what caused that thought?
Well, I mean, it's hard to answer that question. You know what I mean? Because there's so many things coming together. Like I guess one thing I read a book written by this guy Dick Bass, who was the first person to climb the 7 summits, and it was a really cool book. I mean, he went around the world with his partner climbing the tallest peak in every continent. And I read that book and I thought, wow, amazing to make your life into this great adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the first instance was like happenstance because, I went climbing when I was 16. I went up to the Carroll Center for the Blind out of Boston. I lived in Connecticut. My dad would drive me 3 hours, and it was a program that was once a month for blind people to recreate because, back in the 80s, there wasn't like beat baseball and there weren't, ball sports for blind people. So I missed out on all that.
Yeah, they didn't even let you in gym class.
I mean, not
participate
really. Yeah.
in some places.
So I'd lift weights and run on the treadmill and stuff. But it wasn't really like the experience that I was hoping for. So this rec program, they take us horseback riding, tandem biking, sailing, canoeing, fishing, all kinds of stuff, ropes courses. And one weekend they took us up to New Hampshire and we rock climbed for 3 days. And I absolutely loved it because like you, Anthony, I was a wrestler and I was very physical. And I found that rock climbing was very physical. Like it was, you're feeling your way, you're using your hands and your feet as your eyes and kind of feeling your way up the face and problem solving your way up the face, moving your body in really interesting ways that will connect the dots from A to B to C and predicting patterns in the rock.
And
it was really fun. In a weird way, it was a little bit similar to wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved that. And then I moved out to Arizona. As I said, I started rock climbing there. And I met a guy who was a substitute teacher at my school. And he was a weekend warrior too. And we started climbing together. And we were climbing rock faces out in the desert, just having a blast. And I remember I got to the top of this one climb and I said, and Sam actually said, we should try something bigger. And I thought, like, what? Like a bigger rock face? He said, like, how about Denali? And I'm like, what? Denali?
Yeah.
That's like tallest peak in North America. Anyway, but I think in a weird way, and I'm not being super tongue-in-cheek when I say this, I think I'm very susceptible to when people throw out ideas or challenges. I'm like, yeah, that could work.
Me too.
Like, how fun would that be to climb the tallest peak in North America? In a way, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'd hardly even camped since Boy Scouts, like at 14.
Yeah.
And so we went around the country on the weekends from Humphreys Peak, which is the tallest peak in Arizona, to Long's Peak in Colorado, to Mount Hood, to Mount Rainier, just learning the ropes, like how to rope up and how to move and how to use an ice axe and how to, save people when they fall into crevasses, how to set up tents and organize your gear and cook meals on stoves, all that stuff, and it was a year of just massive learning. And then we went off and climbed Denali, and it was so hard. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I mean, like, there were days where I was like, I don't know if I can wake up and do this again. This is so hard.
Is that where you had to sleep in the hammock thing? Like it's hanging off the mountain?
No, that was El Capitan.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Denali, you're sleeping in a tent in the snow, but it's just so cold and miserable. And every day is so physical. You're carrying a huge pack. And I struggled to the top after 19 days and got down to our igloo that we had built up there. And I remember just sitting in that igloo reflecting, and like, it was so conflicted because I remember half of me thought, Erik, you are just not tough enough for the sport. You're not tough enough. You're not one of these badass tough guys that can just deal with the pain and the suffering. Like, but at the same time, the other half of me was like, man, I want to do this forever. I do want to be that guy. And so it was, I think I don't think that's really changed all that much, And metaphorically, I think we're all walking on this knife edge, there's fear and anxiety and limitations on one side, and the other side are dreams and excitement and adventure. And so you're always on this precipice between those two things.
Yeah. So
that
Denali was the first of the 7 peaks.
Yeah, exactly.
From there, you're like, so you were more not just Everest, you were more like, I want the 7 peaks after that, or?
I didn't even know if I could do Everest. I was thinking maybe I could get like 5 out of the 7 or 6 out of the 7.
But
I went out to Aconcagua after that and I failed. So I didn't make the summit and had to go back and do Aconcagua again. And then I did Kilimanjaro. That's not so hard, although the way we did it the first time was pretty hard. And then, so eventually, after climbing a ton of mountains, I thought about Everest, but it's all about meeting the right people. So I was at an outdoor retailer show, which is where they show off the latest gear in the outdoor world. And I met this guy, Pasquale Scaturo. He actually lived in Lakewood, not too far from where I live, but he's an amazing guy. He'd been on Everest twice. He'd summited once. He'd been on Choyu. He'd been on some other expeditions in the Himalayas, and he seemed like a really good organizer. And a friend introduced me to him, and within 5 minutes, he said, "You ever think of climbing Everest?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And there you go. That was when we sat down and we talked about it, and we got a plan, and we got some ideas for sponsorship, and the whole idea came together. It was really amazing.
Man, so was Everest the most challenging? I know it's not the most technical, but was it the most, mentally or physically challenging, or?
Yeah, it was mentally and physically challenging for sure. Yeah.
Out of the 7 summits, was it the most or no? Yeah,
it's the hardest of the 7 because you're at altitude and bad things can happen at altitude. Your brain can swell. Your your lungs can fill with fluid. You can have embolisms, brain bleeds, and so it's not that healthy to be at 29,000 feet, to be honest.
Did you guys use oxygen?
Yeah, we did on our last day and a half. We used oxygen. Yeah.
2 liters per minute, was it?
You got it. That's a good memory. How do you know that?
I read your books, man.
Nice.
You're my hero. Was there a point on Everest where you were like, you faced that feeling again that you did on Denali that was like, I'm not made for this? Or did you just completely numb those type of thoughts and had to stay on the positive end?
Well, you get stronger for sure. So I was a lot stronger on Everest, but still, no, the Khumbu Icefall is right at a base camp, and it's about 2,500 feet of just jumbled up boulders of every size imaginable, exploding and collapsing and tumbling down the mountain like a river of ice. There's seracs that are like these big towers of ice that are collapsing over the trail. You're zigzagging, you're stepping. Every step, you're on these boulders of ice with thousands of foot drops, and you're stepping across these cracks. If you fall into those cracks, you're going to break an ankle or twist your knee, and then you're screwed, you're jumping across crevasses, you're zigzagging on snow bridges that are the width, like twice the width of your boot. You're climbing these jagged ice faces and down the other side, and you're crossing crevasses that are so big. The Sherpas lay like 4 or 5 ladders together. They lash them together, and you walk across these ladders like a drawbridge,
Indiana Jones drawbridge of death.
Drawbridge of death. So
3,000.
I remember
my
that
first time in the icefall, I had I thought I was going to die in the icefall. I was like, oh my God, I can't take a step in this environment, every step could kill you. And I was like, I was overwhelmed for sure. So did I think about quitting? I had at that point learned not to get overwhelmed, not to like what I wrote in my second book, The Adversity Advantage. I talk about catastrophizing, which is you're like, whoa, my God, if this is bad, tomorrow it's going to be worse. And then you just build it up in your mind. It's something I tend to do naturally, honestly. A friend of mine said, don't bleed before you're cut. I think that's like sort of it. You just have to like relax your brain and say, okay, I'm going to keep an open mind because I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it's a new day. And maybe I'll feel stronger. Maybe I'll learn something that'll get me through this situation. So, for sure, though, I was flirting with that fear and anxiety on Everest, because it's just so hard.
I remember that from the documentary of the first time you went, I think, climbing across those crevasses and stuff. And you're like, man, this is taking a long time.
Yeah, it took me way too long because you want to get through the icefall because it's cracking and collapsing and, it's just dangerous. There's icefall that can come down and crush you. And so you want to get through that thing fast. And a sighted person the first time might get through in like, I don't know, I'll guess like 7 hours, maybe 8 hours. And I took 13. And so I felt really worried because I was putting my team in jeopardy. The 2 friends that were guiding me through the icefall, I was increasing the risk for them because I was making them spend more time in the icefall with me. And so PV, Pasquale, our team leader, when I got to the top of the icefall that first time, after 13 hours, I was so crushed. I was about 100 feet from Camp 1, which is at 20,000 feet. And I had my crampons on, of course, and I tripped over a little crack. It wasn't even much of a crack, but I was just so tired I didn't lift my feet up, and I tripped. And my friend tried to reach out and kind of brace me, but he had an ice axe in his hand, and he totally bashed me in the nose with his ice axe. So I came into camp pretty sure my nose was broken, blood just pouring down my face. And I laid down in my tent, and I was so tired. Pasquale took my crampons off for me, and I just laid there in my tent thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this again. Like, what am I going to do? And Pasquale said to the team, he thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. He said, hey, if he can't make it through the ice fall faster than 13 hours, this expedition is over. And so that was a lot of pressure.
That's crushing too. It's like you feel like a burden.
How many times do you have to do that cross?
You have to cross through the ice fall 10 times.
Wow.
Up and down to set up your tents and acclimatize, get your body used to breathing less and less oxygen. But see, here's the thing though, you know, I was so fit and sort of I'd been training and envisioning what it was going to be like standing on the summit, trying to like get myself to believe that I had a chance to do this thing, like all kinds of mental gymnastics, you know. The thing is, when you're that prepared, you know, you can get completely crushed one day. And you get down, you survive it, and you sleep in your tent, and you wake up the next day, and it's a new day. I know that sounds like a cliche, but it's not. I mean, you wake up and you go, yep, this is a brand new day. It's a clean slate. And I think I can do a little better than I did yesterday.
What's the fastest you made that pass? You remember?
Yeah, the last time I made it up and I broke 5 hours.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
that's crazy.
In fact, I felt so strong at Camp 1, I kept on going to Camp 2, which is like usually a 2-day hike.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Man, that's incredible. 13 to 5. Wow.
How does Ellie deal with all of this? Like through all this? You know, you just had a baby too. Your baby's 1 year old when you climb Mount Everest, correct?
Yeah, it's a hard thing on the family, really. It's really hard. Ellie was so supportive when I went to Everest. Emma was like 8 months old. And, you know, I got some criticism for that, you know, like, why would you go to Everest blind with a baby? But it was a family decision. And, you know, I don't know. Life's about hard decisions. And I think I made the right decision. Everything worked out okay, but
I think you set your family up. You definitely made the right decision.
Yeah, but that's all in retrospect. At the time, you know, it was this wild hair of an idea.
Absolutely.
But Ellie was really good, you know, and she would write me notes on, you know, because we could get emails via the satellite that back then they had satellite communication. Kind of spotty, but you'd get like a chunk of emails every now and then. And so she'd write and say, you know, we're toasting you. Emma's drinking grape juice and I'm drinking some wine and we're toasting you. And I think Ellen just wanted me to get it done so that I wouldn't have to, because she kind of knows my personality and she knew that if I didn't get it done, I'd be back.
That's like,
so she's like, might as well get it done the first time.
Yeah, do it
so
the
you
first,
can get this thing out of your hair, out of your mind.
Yeah, definitely. You're like us, where me and Dan get something in our head and we'll kind of obsess over it till we accomplish it.
Yeah.
I want
incredible.
That's amazing. So,
did you feel better summiting Everest, or was Everest the last of the 7 or no?
No, after Everest. And by the way, here's an interesting side note. Because maybe there are blind people listening or people with disabilities or people who want to sort of like figure out how they chart the course of their life. So back to the business side, I went to the National Federation of the Blind with Pasquale, and we were trying to raise money. And I met with the president, Dr. Mark Maurer, at the time. And we presented him with the idea. And he was a pretty blunt dude. He was a lawyer and stuff. And he said, could you die doing this? And I said, well, you could, but I don't plan to. And he's like, are you going to climb this the way a sighted person climbs it? Meaning taking the same risk as a sighted person, being part of the team? Or in a sense, are you going to be carried to the top and spiked on top like a football? I said, no, I want to be part of the team. I want to contribute to the team. And I want to take the same risks that all my team members take. And he said, okay, we'll sponsor this climb. Because he said, you know, Helen Keller, when you think about blindness, who do you think about? Helen Keller. And he said, but that's kind of a dusty image of blindness. She died in 1968. That's still the image of blindness, he said. He's like, we want to update. We want to give blindness a facelift, like a PR facelift. And he said, you know, getting a blind person to the summit of Everest would be like America getting a person to the moon for the first time. And it would change the image of blindness. When people thought about blindness, they'd think about a person summiting Everest. And he's like, that's something that's worth the money. And so essentially it was blind people, what's the NFB? They're 50,000 blind people who are, for the most part, unemployed, doing car washes and bake sales, getting me to the summit. So that was really incredible. That was really special to have the support of the blind community. And afterwards, when I summited and came back to the National Federation of the Blind Convention, like 3,000 blind people stood up and cheered. And it was powerful as hell.
That's great. That's incredible.
So back to my question, did you feel more accomplished peaking Everest or getting the final 7?
Oh, so yeah, after Everest, I had some more to go. I had to climb Elbrus, which is the tallest peak in Europe. It's in Russia. It's in the Caucasus Range. So to make that climb a little different, because it's not super steep, I trained and I skied down from the summit, which is really cool. Skied about 10,000 feet from summit to base camp. And then I went and climbed Kosciuszko, which is the tallest peak in Australia. It's not that high. Australia just doesn't have any super high peaks. Yeah. But we were going to try to paraglide off the summit. As it turns out, the winds were too high, and we couldn't do that. But we skied down from the summit, which was a blast.
That's sick.
Oh, wow.
And then you have Carstensz Pyramid, which is in there's an 8th continent, really, and it's some people call it Oceania, and or Australasia, the broader continent of Australia, like New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, West Papua is in there. It's this big island, and in the middle of that island is a big jungle, of course. And right in the middle of that jungle is this huge limestone massif just jutting out of the jungle. It's like 16,500 feet, and it's actually it's a moderate rock climb to get to the summit. It was really, really cool. So that was my last of the 7. But I would say, Everest was a little more of a high than finishing the 7 summits, because I knew that I was going to finish after, getting to the top of Everest.
Right.
What about that compared to finishing the Grand Canyon? Just totally.
Grand Canyon was very equal to Everest. I mean, because it was so hard. I went through so much doubt.
Wow.
I'd say I went through more doubt and fear on the Grand Canyon than on Everest, because water was an environment I just wasn't that comfortable with. You flip upside down, you can't breathe, there's no oxygen, you're just panicking under there. So it took me so long to be able to get comfortable being in this tiny little boat, which is like a tiny little race car, going into these massive rapids that you cannot see. The only thing you really have as a tool is my hearing. I can hear the pour overs and some of the things, but sometimes you're engulfed in sound, such chaotic, massive roar of a sound that you can't even echolocate at all.
Way too loud to hear.
Way too loud. So I have radios in my ears, my guides yelling at me through my through my radio. You have to get that command. If you miss the command, you're like so screwed. So everything has to kind of go relatively as scheduled or on plan, but you know that the river currents are shoving you left and right into places that you don't want to go to. And as a blind person, I don't exactly know that. So I'm relying on my guide and what I'm feeling under my boat. And like skiing, you're hitting waves that you have no idea they're coming. So you're just reacting. It's like instantaneous reaction. It was just a lot. It was overwhelming knowing that in that next 2 minutes, crazy stuff was going to be happening to me that I needed to respond to effectively. And if I didn't, things were going to go south fast.
Did the anxiety of, I can imagine like your guide telling you, all right, get ready, because in about 30 seconds, here we go again. Did that anxiety dissipate over time where you kind of felt more comfortable by the end of like
a little bit for sure? Yeah, a little bit, but it was a little bit, but still it's take a big deep breath and check your gut and just go, okay, I got to stay calm in this situation, because if I'm not calm, I'm panicky. I'm like panicking with my strokes. things are going to go even more south. So you have to be calm. You have to be aggressive. You have to be leaning forward into that chaos and fully accepting it and embracing it and enabling your skills to just take over. And in a way, sometimes you do go into this zone. I bet you get it skateboarding, or I used to get it in wrestling from time to time, where you just are in this zone and time slows down.
Yep.
And you're actually able to like feel the like moments of time between your breaths. And you're like, wow, I'm just moving fluidly through this environment. And it's not like I'm separate and the environment's out there and I'm here.
Yes.
You're kind of like, it kind of merges together for a moment. And those are the best moments. I think those are the moments when you just want to come back to that time and time again.
Yeah, you're just naturally reacting to the water and almost feel like you know exactly what you're
all
supposed
makes
to do.
sense.
And sometimes there's even a smile on your face, but that took 6 years of training to get there.
Well, you sound like you thrive off of, like, this reminds you of skateboarding too, like where something seems impossible in the beginning, and you talked about this earlier, where you're like, you don't see a path, you don't know what to do, but then slowly you build out this path and learn the map of everything, and it starts to make sense towards the end, and then you're equipped.
You nailed it. That's exactly what it is. And I'm not smart enough to figure out those answers myself. I've always had great teams. Like my friend Rob Breaker is the one who taught me how to kayak, and he taught me how to roll, and he guided me down the river, and we figured out these systems together, like how I would navigate. Because in a boat, like for instance, I would get in a lake and I'd paddle. He'd say, paddle a straight line. River kayaks are meant to turn. So I would literally turn a 180 and he'd say, hey, which way are you facing right now? I'm like, straight. He's like, nope, you just did a 180, dude. I'm like, I didn't even know. How am I going to kayak a river? I can't kayak a lake. So yeah, you're figuring out things, but it's a team that figures it out. And Rob was an expert kayaker, and my other friends were really good kayakers. So, you know, it's great when somebody takes you under their wing and says, I'll mentor you and give you the fast track to what you should be doing.
I can't imagine. Sometimes I go out in my canoe and I fish and I'll have either my wife or my friend FaceTime me to get me out.
Wonderful.
And I'll throw an anchor and then just fish. But coming back in, I mean, there's a 100-yard beach with one swim platform, and somehow my wife sends me right into the swim platform, like in the canoe. So I can't imagine having to be that precise.
That's awesome.
That. It's got to be.
She could blare your favorite song from the dock too.
Yep. Yeah,
I do that sometimes when I'm out kayaking on my lake.
Man, it's it's incredible, man. And I was so naive about kayaking, especially that river. And then I started hearing about the stories of, you know, getting launched like 15 feet in the air upside down. I'm like, wow, it's like I never thought about how powerful that water was and how truly dangerous. Yeah,
water's powerful. And the thing about the difference between climbing and kayaking is that the river moves at its own pace. In climbing or skiing, you can stop and regroup and take a breath. In kayaking, you cannot do that. You're on the pace of the river and it's moving. It's like it's like a moving sidewalk. And so you're reacting to this like fourth dimension that's under your boat that's honestly affecting you. And you can't always control it. You sometimes just have to ride the energy of that chaos, that power. And so in a way, it was like a little bit more about letting go than assuming more control.
Are there not a lot of trees on the side of that river?
No, not in the Grand Canyon. There's hardly any trees. There's
I've got
like manzanita trees or tamarack trees, but
it's just Arizona.
Yeah, but bushes more.
Yeah.
There's there's some cottonwoods on the side, but no, there's not any trees you have to worry about.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around, because I've been taken out with my wife in the canoe on just like the Michigan rivers.
But I've been paddleboarding in a little lake, and I'm paddling and I'm echolocating, trying to hear the side of the river. Of the lake, and a tree had fallen out into the lake, and I didn't see it, and it hit me in the ankles, and I just did a complete like somersault and flip into the water over this tree. So there's There's the
I wondered about that with
there's the casualties of war sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It was the Grand Canyon was awesome. We got to play guitar. I got to play guitar in a cave. Like there were so many different things. The thing that I just really appreciate about you, Erik, is like you do have that mentality of like, oh, you said it was a little shallow in the beginning, but you're working on it. The whole well, you can't do that, and then it's like, well, I can, and you take that over to not only blindness. You've found a way to incorporate this into everybody's life with all different abilities. Like I've been at these no barrier summits you throw every year that people in wheelchairs are climbing, they're rock climbing. People are doing amazing things, and it's not they can't do this. You're a real problem solver of how can we do this? And I really appreciate that about you. Like the guy with he was a amputee, and you guys put packing tape on his arms and legs for him to climb up the mountain in Colorado.
Yeah.
I just thought it was incredible how you were the first of this innovation, like before the equipment was built and all this stuff, like you were making that equipment. So I really appreciate everything you've done for the whole community.
Thank you. That's called our summit, and we won't have one this summer, but next summer we'll have another one. Yeah, it's really this beautiful celebration of what's possible for people and what an inclusive world could look like. So yeah, we have all kinds of activities, from kickboxing to archery to climbing to mountain biking to I don't know, just everything under the sun.
I did
Everything
skateboarding one year.
Yeah, skateboarding one year.
We should bring that
and it's
back.
all about like trying to figure it out an inclusive way for everyone to be able to experiment and test different adaptive devices and trying to figure out how they're going to be part of things, rather than be excluded. So yeah, the summit's a beautiful, I think, manifestation of what this no barriers life can look like.
What's within you is stronger than what's in front of you.
Yep, exactly.
Last thing, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time too. This has been like, we've been dreaming about this episode. What would you tell someone? What does Erik Weihenmayer do when he's faced with the fear of giving up? How do you push through that when life seems so down? You just go blind. You lost your mom, someone who's dealt with loss. Like I lost my brother, and then my mom got injured right after. How do you deal with that time where you feel like you're at the lowest low, and like it almost feels like it's not going to get better, or you've never dealt with that thought?
No, I have dealt with that thought a lot. I mean, I talk a lot about this in a lot of my books and so forth. I talk about this idea of alchemy. It's this idea that when you live as an alchemist, you're trying to take the lead that life piles on top of you and figure out a way to transform it into gold. And so, it's not just surviving adversity or even overcoming it, as people talk about. It's really taking these challenges, and they're all around us, and trying to sort of harness that energy, pinpoint that adversity, and then just attack it, and figure out along the way, what's the learning, where are the gifts, and where are the hidden gifts along the way, through this struggle.
Find the teachings.
Yeah, but it's not, people can take this as a massive cliche, oh, it's turning lemons into lemonade. No, it's this really deep, soulful process, a half art, half science, trying to sort of figure out how to take struggle and turn it into innovation or wisdom or empathy or connection, love, and it's something we spend a lifetime trying to pursue and perfect and coming back to when we're faced with challenge. And so I do think alchemy is an important part of my life that I try to have the discipline to utilize. It's hard sometimes, but then you're talking about people dying. That's like the ultimate adversity. And then I think to myself, and this is kind of like weirdly existential, I think, what's the point of giving up? Like, yes, I miss my mom, and I miss my brother who passed away, and my sister who passed away. My best friend passed away. Lots of climbers have passed away. I mean, this is like devastating, but like, what am I going to do? I'm a living person, and I'm going to live hard until the day I die, because pretty soon we'll be all taking that eternal nap. So live hard while you can and make the best impact you can on the world. And as PV said to me after Everest, he said, "Oh, these experiences are catalysts to more growth, more impact, more learning in our lives." He said, "Don't waste it. Keep moving forward and trying to figure out how you can make the world a little better place."
Don't let Everest be the biggest thing you ever do.
That's what he said. Yeah.
That hit hard.
That's great advice, man.
That's
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you.
Are you tired of talking about Everest because you've done so much afterwards?
Not at all. It was a huge influential, poignant part of my life. And so I don't mind talking about it at all. It is 22 years ago now. But hey, I'm still getting after it. Like I was outside of Vegas for a week climbing in this beautiful place called Red Rocks. I mean,
Red Rocks. Yeah.
I'm heading to Canada this summer to climb this huge face. Heading to the Dolomites. I'm going to be doing some cool bike packing adventures this summer.
Cool.
So I'm still getting after it, and it makes me happy to be able to still continue to live a fun life and a fulfilling, adventuresome life. And then also, with the No Barriers work that I do, helping other people that I think have a higher chance than maybe able-bodied people of being shoved to the sidelines into that dark place and kind of being left there, marginalized, right? And I think like we got to get people who might sit on the sidelines and get them back into the thick of things, into this fulfilling life and to reclaiming their lives. So they can sort of feel fulfilled and say, hey, I'm living a no barriers life. It doesn't mean they're climbing mountains or they're skateboarding or wrestling, or it could be something deeply personal for each and every human being. But that's really the goal of No Barriers. Like it's a massive waste of potential and talent in the world for so many people to get sidelined. And that's both physical disabilities, but also the mental, the emotional stuff that comes along with it. We call them invisible barriers. These barriers that are fear and doubt and anxiety and depression and disconnection and all these things that people face. I mean, those are just as important as the physical things.
Absolutely, man. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, I'd say lean into that. No barriers. I'm sure you are as you get older and older, and that sounds like
older and older and older and older.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing, fulfilling.
Listen, when you said the thing about 55 trying to transition, I thought I was at that point at 29. So you gave me some inspiration.
Anthony always thinks he's done. I'm like, dude, you are so young. I mean, I'm still young too.
But the Paralympics,
you still got a lot of life, man.
Yeah.
Paralympics didn't call you, huh? Like you didn't have a calling to that for like climbing.
Look, I'm not dissing anything. I think the Paralympics is beautiful, and it's like if that's somebody's passion, it just was never my passion. Like
that's it. Yeah.
Like even in climbing contests, I'm like, do I really care about being a little bit of a better climber than this other blind guy to my left? Like I have no interest in that. Like I really want to be out in the world doing big things.
That's a great
with my friends and like more in the mainstream.
Do you do any free solo?
Nah, not too much. I mean, I have from time to time, but it scares me. And then I say I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I was curious about that too.
Yeah.
Well,
man.
Thank you, Erik. Is there anything you'd like people to know to check out? I know you have your 3 books and tons of films.
No, not really. Yeah, check out the films. There's tons of stuff out there. Check out the books. Learn about No Barriers. If somebody wants to learn more, they can go to nobarriersusa.org. And, if you have a person in your life who's a veteran who needs a little support, or a blind person or person with any kind of disability, or any teenager who's struggling, or even caregivers. We have a program for caregivers, because people who support those with disabilities or injuries or illness, they never get a break. Sometimes that's 24/7. And so we have programs to give caregivers a little break. We take them on these retreats and we help them to kind of step out of that,
taking care.
fire hose, I guess.
Endless.
And,
yeah.
and think about their lives and what their vision is and what their no barriers life could look like.
That's great.
Man, you're hitting all the marks. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Got all the buzzing. Well, Erik, I'm gonna tell you like a great man told you one time. Don't let the Four Bad Eyes podcast be the biggest thing you ever do, okay?
I'll try not to. That's hard though. That's a hard measuring stick.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for impacting my life so much as you have.
You should call it Four Really Bad Eyes. Like not just a little bit bad.
I know.
Four completely worthless eyes.
They're pretty bad. Yeah.
Dan's got one prosthetic.
One prosthetic. The other one's shriveled up. I got to take the other one out too. Not looking for.
I got 2 prosthetic eyes too. So yeah.
Oh,
does your wife kiss them before bed?
What's that? She did. Yeah, one time.
It was a one-time thing. Okay.
Only a one-time thing. That was a one-time thing. Yes. Other than that, it's gross.
Oh, good night, eyes. Good night, moon.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
All right, see you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erik. Peace.
All right, later, boys.
Keep pushing it. Yep.
One love.
Keep pushing, and one love from Four Bad Eyes.